I just learned that my parents kidnapped me because I was the Antichrist. Part 2. Perhaps not the exact demonic being from Christian eschatology, given that my story concerns neither heaven nor hell, neither God nor the devil. Still, I don't know a better word to describe me. Regardless of my cult-specific religious ideology, the fact of the matter remains that I was born with a godless purpose, much like Lucifer himself. I was conceived to bring about the end of mankind. On Tuesday, after a sleepless night and a day of bus hopping from city to city, I eventually wandered into a library, hoping that I'd put enough distance between myself and that home intruder. My chest still fluttered with adrenaline. I'd not felt terror like that since Miss Black nearly stole me from the world as a boy. And I believed my father that touching the photograph and those documents had been the gateway to those people. I didn't believe in the supernatural until I felt it for myself. A force beyond earthly explanation. I don't know how to describe the sensation, but I felt those people, the ones who made me. I saw them, and they saw me. And I knew I had to do whatever possible to stop them from finding me again. Using a library computer, I reached out on Reddit and other online forums, asking for information as to the identities of these people. I expected it to be difficult to find answers about a cult of, judging by the photograph, only 50 people. But I learned that I was dealing with something bigger than that. This cult is named the Old Collective. It is a community of folk who have long practiced occult rituals, all in the name of saving humanity. Their goal has long been to kill the many and save the few. Not for the sake of preserving the planet, but for building a new status quo, building a dark and brutish wasteland with them and their god of flesh as its ruler. All they have ever needed, to carry out their unholy plan, is a vessel. A vessel to become their god of flesh. And, worst of all, I learnt that this cult numbers in the thousands, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of members across the world. This opened up an entirely new compartment of fear in my chest. You see, at first, I imagined that the home intruder had walked through some spectral gateway to reach my location within a matter of mere minutes. The reality, however, was perhaps worse. He'd simply been nearby. This cult is so large, and so pervasive in global civilization, that these monsters are everywhere. You live near these people. They walk among you. In your city. Your town. Your village. People who want to end you and everything you love. I realized, as I sat in the middle of that library with teary eyes surveying my surroundings fearfully, that there wasn't a bus in the world that could take me away from them. Nowhere was safe. I had to find a way to make myself safe. I eventually stumbled across a private Discord server, titled 11, concerning matters of the occult. The conversation quickly took quite a turn. Me, how do I contact my parents safely? Yell 10, don't. Me, but I need to find out whether they made it to the hospital. Yell 10, if they're still alive, it's only because the Old Collective has allowed it. Perhaps to draw you back there. Blue Man, Yell 10 is right. You cannot trust anybody. These people have spent 20 years searching for you, and they'll never give up. They'll try to bait you somewhere. Don't stay in any one place for too long. Me, my father still didn't fully explain how they found us the first time. Yell 10, those papers and that photo were spiritual instruments imbued with a spiritual link between you and the Old Collective. One touch allows you to see them and them to see you. It's a bridge of the mind. Of the spirit. Of the soul. Me, but they won't find me now, right? Without those spiritual instruments? Blue Man, you can't outrun this, Adam. Me, please don't call me that. I'm Charlie. Yell 10, you sound like one of them, Blue Man. Blue Man, same right back at you, asshole. Yell 10, are you keeping safe, Charlie? Me, sure. I'm using a public computer rather than my phone, though I know these people use rituals and old magic to search for me. Blue Man, that doesn't mean they can't find you through technology too. I'd leave that library right now if I were you. Another ominous message. I found myself agreeing with Yell 10, it seemed like this Blue Man almost admired the Old Collective. Then I received a private message. Yell 10, I don't often advocate doxing, But if somebody had the technological wherewithal to uncover the location of, say, a certain blue man, then that somebody might provide you with this. Below this message was the shared Google location, just outside Paris, of a phone belonging to a man whose identity I won't share here. Me, why the fuck would you give me this? Yell 10, if he's with the old collective, and you get the jump on him, you'll get answers. I didn't know how I found agreeing to something so ludicrous, but I got up from the chair in the library, and hurriedly made my way out, head pounding painfully. I also don't know how I so easily convinced myself to pour a hefty chunk of my student loan into a plane ticket, of all things, in the middle of the week. Then again, I had more to fear than missing lectures and assignments. I still wanted to believe the whole ordeal to be in my head, my aching head. Wanted to believe I hadn't seen or felt a thing whilst holding that photograph and those pieces of paper. That there had been no intruder in our home. That Mum and Dad were sitting in a hospital somewhere, wondering why their son had vanished for 24 hours. But I knew better. I felt the prick when I touched that first document, not a paper cut, but some living thing within the paper. And I saw people standing in all parts of the world, watching and smiling at me. It was no dizzy spell that took hold of me. Moreover, when I arrived in Paris late on Tuesday evening, I realized I was making a grave mistake. Yet, that didn't stop me. Didn't convince me to cancel the Uber to Blue Man's apartment building. Didn't convince me to get off the pavement, from which I stood and eyeballed the large, limestone structure, towering 4 stories above me. Didn't convince me to run when the hairs on the back of my neck stood to attention. Then came a brutish hand around my neck, and it clamped firmly against my mouth. I unleashed a terrified screech, pleading for my life, as I was dragged into an alleyway opposite the apartment building. And I decided that this must be it, the terrifying end to my short-lived quest for answers. I sobbed, and shrieked, and begged for mercy in a muffled voice, all while attempting and failing to come to terms with the seeming inevitability of my oncoming demise. "Quiet," hissed my assailant in a French accent. "I will let my hand go, Mr. Charlie, but you must stop. Please. I'm not with them. I'm not." My eyes broadened as I realized it was him, Blue Man. I elbowed the man, propelling myself forwards, then spun around with fists raised, and he held his hands up defensively. "You shouldn't have come here," he said in a breathy voice. "They tricked you. They're already in your head. You can feel them squirming around in there, can't you?" I gulped, trying to ignore the pounding sensation in my skull. "Who the fuck are you?" "We have to get away from here," Blue Man pleaded in a whisper. "There's someone in my apartment. 3rd floor. They used me as bait to find you." I looked up at the 3rd floor, following Blue Man's shaky finger to a row of lit windows. Figures walked past the glass panes, searching for the Frenchman who had escaped and, seemingly, waited for me to show. Waited to apprehend me before the old collective could do so. I believed him. Call it my 6th sense. Just like my sense that, as Blue Man had said, these people had wormed their way into my brain. Ever since I touched the things in that box. And the thought of them rummaging around up there, much as they were rummaging through Blue Man's apartment, filled me with deep, unyielding horror. When I snapped back into reality, I realized that I was still staring at the lit windows of Blue Man's apartment, but all movement had stopped behind the glass panes. There were 3 silhouettes standing and looking out at the night. Looking out at us. Blue Man and I jolted on the spot as the lights in the apartment suddenly cut out. "They're coming," he murmured, backing down the alley. "Come on. We've got to go." We both turned to flee, but stopped immediately in our tracks. The dark outlines of heads were visible at the far end of the alley, men and women obstructing our path. "Shit," Blue Man whispered, turning back to the main road. "Okay, we'll go this." The man grabbed hold of my arm, just below the sleeve of my white tee, and unleashed an almighty scream, the most horrific scream I have ever heard. It was something beyond human, for he suffered a pain no human should suffer. And as he recoiled from me, it was my turn to scream in horror, for Blue Man's skin bore cracks that were spreading across his flesh, painting his arms, then his cheeks, and presumably his entire body. And in a swift act of what I choose to see as mercy, all was over in a matter of seconds. Bubbling blood, emitting steam, poured through the wounds, red-hot blood spilling out of a body boiling alive. And then, like a glass cracking from thermal stress, Blue Man's entire form shattered spontaneously, reducing him to a pool of indistinguishable mush on the floor. Since touching the things in that box, something had awoken within me. Something that made me an abomination to the touch. The ender of humanity. I wailed, stumbling into the street, as the horrifying figures from the alley and Blue Man's apartment building began to surround me. I shivered, terrified beyond words, in the center of the road as I prepared to meet my end. And then came a brilliant burst of thought, whether internal or external, I do not care. But as the connection between the old collective and me strengthened, and I had visions of the many thousands of followers across the world, an ingenious idea struck me. An idea struck by the hellish end to which Blue Man had just succumbed. When those people and I were connecting like that, whether in our minds or some spiritual realm, it was almost like touching. Like touching Blue Man. And as I had terrifying visions of those many nightmarish figures across the world, searching for me, intending to use me for awful and unspeakable things, I decided to let them reach out, to let them touch me through that spiritual plane. In fact, I begged them to do so. And they foolishly did. Then came the screams. The screams of those dozens of monsters surrounding me in the street, moments away from getting their greedy mitts on me. I don't know whether they'd even thought about the situation, in their collective delirium. Thought about what had just happened to Blue Man. A mere touch of my skin, and his blood had boiled, had poured through opening fissures in his skin. And now the same fate was befalling each of them. It might have befallen others across the world. I don't know how far it reached. All I know is that I felt them reaching out in my mind, and something within me reached back. Something dark that they put inside me. And that is what I fear most. Even now, after fleeing France and putting distance between myself and that awful cult, I realize that I cannot run. Even if I were to end every last cult member on earth, I wouldn't be killing the true evil that hunts me. Has hunted me since my birth. After all, I put an end to them, but not to myself, not to the thing inside me. I have no control over any of this. It was all planned out for me, and I am as much a victim as any of you. I was created to end the world. Will I stop here?